exploring the bizarre. Your e-ticket ride into the world of the paranormal. Strap yourself in as we traverse the universe exploring the unexplained. UFOs, ghosts, lost worlds, cryptozoology, as well as other dimensions. It's time to take back the night. Now, your electrifying hosts of Exploring the Bizarre, Timothy Beckley and Tim Swartz.
Wow, Tim, isn't Venus as large and bright tonight as I've ever seen it? First star we've seen tonight. Supposed to be good luck if you repeat it 3 times. First star we've seen tonight. First star we've seen tonight.
Yep, sure is, Timmy. But is it supposed to be moving around like that? I think it's getting closer.
Wow, it's a spaceship, and I bet there are human-looking aliens on board. Let's go if they offer us a lift.
Well, we'll have to be careful unless we see the late Dr. Strange's or his pal Valiant Thor in the hatchway.
Wow, Venus, if you will. Wow, what a wonderful night. Look at all the stars and all the spaceships. And they're coming towards Exploring the Bizarre, and our guest. Well, I think our guests tonight are familiar with some visitors from Venus. Wouldn't you say, Tim?
Oh, I certainly hope so. If not, then we're not going to have a very good show tonight. But I think we are going to have an excellent show.
Well, I am looking forward to this because we're going to be talking about 2 of my most favorite people, Dr. Frank Stranges and Howard Menger. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean for you the people in the audience who are not of like mind, and it doesn't necessarily mean that I believe everything that they've said, but I am just very prone to fantasize about the early contactee days of the UFO movement and the Space Brothers and all the events that went with it, the trips into outer space, whether they took place for real or for not. Today we have a lot of abductions where people are being scarred for life. I mean, it would seem, Tim, we've got this dichotomy of both the yin and yang and good and bad. And, well, I think tonight we're going to center our activities on the good side of ufology and the ultra-terrestrials. If we were doing a program on Mars, perhaps we would do a little bit of the negative side. But tonight, it's all about Venus and our friends from the North Star.
Well, yeah, it's Venus has always fascinated me when it came to the whole flying saucers and contactees and space brothers. You had some people who claimed that they had talked to Martians, but it seems that Venus and Venusians have always played such a predominant role. In all of this. I mean, and even today, there are people who say that they have contacts with people from Venus. And I mean, even though scientists, say that Venus is a uninhabitable planet, it's hostile. It's it's way too warm. Not like. Not like New York City, that's like 5 below zero. No. That's right. You could use some of that high pressure warmth there right now, couldn't you?
You bet. But enough dilly-dallying on the surface of Venus. Why don't you tell us who we're going to be speaking with this evening?
Oh, well, it'll be my pleasure. Well, we have some absolutely fantastic guests tonight, Tim. First of all, we have Dr. Raymond Keller. Now, Raymond has been involved in active UFO research since 1967, and I think he also had a UFO experience when he was younger. which we'll have to have him talk about. Now, he was a reporter for the Bedford Time Register in his hometown of Bedford, Ohio, and a research association with Earl J. Neff, the founder and director of the Cleveland Ufology Project.
Cups.
That's right.
Cups, good old cups. I used to, Tim, get on my ham radio or long distance radio and tune in. I think it was Tuesday night, but I might be wrong. The Earl Neff's Ufology Roundtable out of Cleveland.
Wow.
So I'm an old fan of Earl Neff. I can't say I knew him well, but he did read a postcard that I sent him when I was running the Interplanetary News Service. And he, in fact, it's archived somewhere on the internet. From Tim Beckley, I asked him a smart-ass question.
Anyway, did he give you a smart-ass answer?
Well, he gave me a very good answer. I can't remember what it was now, but anyway, there you go. But continue on.
Well, Dr. Keller, or a.k.a. Cosmic Ray, has conducted numerous excursions to UFO hotspots throughout the planet and has communicated directly with extraterrestrials on many occasions. His books include Venus Rising, A Concise History of the Second Planet, The Final Countdown, Rocket to Venus, and his most recent, The Cosmic Ray's Excellent Venus Adventure. Now, also with us tonight is our good friend, CRAIG Campobassो. Sorry, Craig, I always stumble over these names. Campobassо, am I saying that right? He's got his mic muted.
Yes, you are. You did it perfectly.
Thank you, Craig. Thank you. You're so sweet. Now, I think this is...
I'm proud of you, Tim.
Well, as you well know, I have a horrible time stumbling over certain names, so you're too kind. Now, Craig, I don't know if he has been on Exploring the Bizarre before, but he has been on other shows that we have hosted, Tim. So
well, he has been on. Yeah.
Has he been on our show? Okay, I'm not positive. My memory, doesn't go back more than just a few weeks. So, but
you've been spending too much time on Venus. That's why.
Yeah, that's right. Now, Craig has been involved in filmmaking fresh out of high school, where he found himself working behind the scenes on Frank Herbert's Dune, the movie by David Lynch, which I know a lot of people pan that, but I always find that movie just extremely fascinating. Now, Craig has directed, wrote, and produced the short film Stranger at the Pentagon, which was adapted from the popular UFO book authored by the late Dr. Frankie Stranges. After production, the short film collected accolades. In September 2014, it won Best Science Fiction Award at the World Fest Houston International Film Festival for the Best Science Fiction short film. Now, he's also the author of the autobiography of an extraterrestrial saga, and which is the third and final installment of the trilogy. Craig's fourth book will be entitled the how do you pronounce this, Craig? The Huroid Revolution.
The Huroid Revolution. So it's continuing in the series.
Okay, and his first book, of course, is the autobiography of an extraterrestrial saga, I Am Thyron. And Craig... Theron, right.
That's three.
Boy, I start saying that's a new record for me. And we also have online with us tonight, and we'll bring her into the conversation just a while, Julie Stranges, who is the wife of the late Dr. Frank Stranges. So, everyone, thank you very much for being with us tonight on Exploring the Bizarre.
Well, I think. You're more than welcome. We're going to bring this down to earth. Let us say, all right. Hey, okay, Cosmic Ray. That's the name you go by.
Yes.
Okay. How did you? Well, let's start at the beginning. You've apparently been in the field. You're an old timer. Going back to 1967, were you involved in the Cleveland UFO project group?
Yes, Cleveland Ufology Project, headed up at that time by Mr. Earl J. Neff. He was one of the former Untouchables, the sketch artist for Elliot Ness. And he worked as an artist for the Standard Oil Company at the time, but he was closely associated with Coral and Jim Lorenzen and the Aerial Phenomena Research Organization out in Tucson, Arizona, as well as Major Donald E. Kehoe, was the director of NICAP, National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena, which pre-MUFON was the largest UFO group in the country.
Well, now, how? Okay, so the Earl Neff, if I remember correctly, was not a devoted fan of the contactees. Wasn't he pretty anti Adamski and Howard Menger and some of the other fellows that you later seemed to become interested and give credibility to?
Originally, of the Cleveland Ufology Project is, of course, the oldest group in the United States with the UFO.
Well, we've had their current director on. I mean, we're still in touch with the organization.
Oh yes. So originally they were very skeptical about things, but as time moved on, they began to realize, hey, the universe is a pretty big place, and there's room for all kinds of phenomena out there.
Well, what got you? Did you have a personal sighting, or what was it that got you going as far as the UFOs are concerned?
Yes, Tim. On the 21st of June of 1967, I was coming back from a camp out with the Boy Scouts, and a friend and I happened to be walking under a railroad trestle, and about some 1,000 feet overhead was a large disc-shaped object, which looked like the traditional flying saucer, and became very excited and infatuated with the whole subject of UFOs. And in fact, about 50 years ago, the National Enquirer even did an article about it. And if you Google my name, Raymond Keller, Venus, you could probably find that article somewhere.
Well, tell us a little bit about it.
Well, it was a traditional saucer-shaped object, and I'm holding up a picture of it in the Enquirer, and it inspired us as young journalists to start writing columns in our local newspapers about it, the Maple Heights Press and the Bedford Times Register. So we had a weekly column about flying saucers, and then Earl Neff contacted us, and we became involved with the Cleveland Ufology Project, and from there he gave us $30 to start the Flying Saucer Report, which we started on a mimeograph press, and
good old mimeograph. I know it well. I had a Gestetner.
Oh yeah, we had to took the stylus and drew flying saucers on the stencil to illustrate all the sightings and everything, and we began to trade publications first with Mr. Gray Barker in Clarksburg.
Oh yes, of course. He was my first publisher.
And then later with Jean Duplantier up in Willowdale, Ontario, Canada.
I spoke to him. I spoke to him recently. He just turned 91.
Wow.
I tried to get him on the show, but he said no. He wasn't up to doing it, but he was right on the ball. I talked with him for about 10 minutes just recently. So I'm trying to get him to reprint some of the early issues of Saucer, Space, and Science, which actually was the first and maybe the only magazine I ever sent $2 for 6 issues, I think it was in those days. But anyway, continue. It's a fascinating story.
Oh, yes. And other groups around the world. And after the National Enquirer article, there were articles about us in our Flying Saucer Report in like Sunday school messengers and all across the country, all across the world, and UFO Research Queensland contacted us, and groups in Europe, and pretty soon we had a pretty large subscription base and started to amass a massive amount of information about the elusive flying saucers.
But Dr. Keller, I mean, how did you first get fascinated on the subject of Venus and the contactees? I mean, what pulled you into that direction?
Well, I lived out in Los Angeles for a while with my aunt and my grandma, and they gave me a book on the solar system and the planets of the solar system, and I began to wonder, hey, is there life out there? What kind of life could be out there? And then when I perchanced upon a copy of George Adamski's Flying Saucers Have Landed, British Book Center, 1953, I couldn't put it down. And then I read Howard Menger's From Outer Space to You, and then the UFO International from Gabriel Green out in Yucca Valley, and I said, there's really something to this. This is very interesting.
Well, we reprint some of those early books, and we've done a couple of books by Dana Howard. She wrote Up Rainbow Hill, and she had, of course, she used to speak at George Van Tassel's Giant Rock Airport, and she claimed to have contacted or actually seen this very beautiful, very tall Venusian a woman who materialized in front of her in Joshua Tree. Now, a lot of this activity was down around Joshua Tree and south of, I guess, Los Angeles, right?
Yes, that's right. In about 17 miles, I'd say, to the northeast of Yucca Valley, out at Landers Field, the Giant Rock Airport, where they held the big convention every year. And what's interesting about Mrs. Dana is that she was in an androgynous relationship because she had an Earth family and children, but she also had a husband and another family on Venus. So I guess she's like a pioneering female in that regard.
Mm-hmm. Well, some of these stories certainly were fascinating, but how about the credibility of the? I mean, what do you see as evidence that these experiences actually took place? I mean, what would you say to somebody who is skeptical and say, "Oh, there isn't life on Venus. No, you can't go into a spaceship and travel to other planets, and that why would aliens look remotely human in appearance?"
Well, all life in the that we know it, it doesn't have to exist as we know it. Now we know that here on Earth there are extremophiles. They live at the 2 miles depth of the Mariana Trench under tremendous pressures and temperatures exceeding 700, 800 degrees at volcanic vents. So, who's to say that life doesn't exist everywhere? In fact, Helena Blavatsky, the co-founder of the Theosophical Society, she said that the whole immensity of space was filled with intelligences, that living light from the sun was an intelligence, that like you see in the cartouches and murals in Egypt, Akhenaten and illumination from star people. So, I mean, this is nothing new under the sun.
Now, by the time you got into all of this, Dr. Keller, I mean, the contactee movement, the Space Brothers had kind of waned. I mean, you got into it in the late '60s, and already at that point we were starting to see people reporting abductions and things like that, and not as many of the Space Brothers. So. What was it that did you have any experiences of your own that convinced you that this is this is true, this is really happening?
Oh yes, I did. I was a member of Amalgamated Flying Saucer Clubs of America, presided over by Gabriel Green, who ran for president twice.
I got his campaign button right on my wall over here.
Oh, wow.
Abe in 64 and Gabe in 64, yeah.
Oh, Mr. UFO, I have to tell you, when I was growing up, I had a subscription to Flying Saucers magazine from Raymond Palmer. I looked forward to every issue of that because there was a column in there, I think, on the trail of the flying
saucers. Yeah.
That was you, right? It had like a giant robot. And a bunch of saucers.
Oh, yes. Oh, absolutely. In fact, I collected all those columns, or all the ones that I could find, along with I think 8 or 10 articles that I had done for the UFO Report, which was the prestigious magazine at the time, and probably still is. Of course, they've been out of business for a long time, and reprinted in a book called Tim Beckley's Strange Saga, which is available for a very minimal price on Amazon. I kept the price low just because I wanted the people to read all the material that kind of got me, started and began my career in publishing and writing. And I certainly owe a great thanks to both Gray Barker and Ray Palmer. Without them, I wouldn't be sitting here today interviewing you guys and continuing to publish books at the ripe age of 70. I
have to thank you because you helped keep the contactee phenomena alive through these times. And as we all know, John A. Keel has done so much research on contactees, and I just wrote an interesting article about John A. Keel. Evolution of a ufologist, and he informed us from his archives of literally thousands of cases of silent
contactees. You're right.
And
well,
the reason
we have a break coming up here, but we'll be right back, and so everybody stay glued to your radio, and let's bring in that signal from Venus.
Now back to exploring the bizarre with two of the most electrifying researchers in the paranormal, your hosts, Timothy Beckley and Tim Swartz.
And welcome back to Exploring the Bizarre. I'm Tim Swartz. And Tim, why don't we bring Craig into the conversation now, because I know that he has somebody special that we'd all like to talk with. But Craig, why don't you just quickly tell us, I mean, what got you interested in Dr. Frank Strange's and his contact with the man from Venus?
Well, I had originally read the book in the 80s, and I was really quite fascinated with it, and I was very drawn to the actual photographs of Valiant Thor, Commander Dawn, and Jill in there. It just resonated with me. And then we just sort of flash forward to about the beginning of 2002, and my casting partner at the time wanted me to meet this older couple who were friends of hers. They lived in Arizona, and they saw flying saucers all the time. and she knew my interest in it. So anyway, I met with them. Their names were Gieran and Sherry, and they brought up Dr. Frank's name and said, "Do you want to meet him?" And I said, "Well, of course, I'd love to meet him." So I literally was sitting with him the very next week having lunch. And I just thought it was going to be a nice little fan lunch, me being the fan. And we ended up becoming friends. And long story short, there was a man who had called Dr. Frank and said he wanted to make the book into a movie. And so he wanted to know if since I've been in the film business my whole life, if I would accompany him and his wife, Julie, to the meeting, to check the guy out. And anyway, it didn't pan out. And one thing led to another. And I started sitting with Dr. Frank and also with Julie and hearing all of his stories from the first time he met Valiant Thor in December of 1959, and learning about the crew and the vice commanders and all of that, which I just found fascinating. So over the course of a few years, put together a feature-length script, and worked on that, and then we lost Dr. Frank in November of 2008, and sort of just shelved it. And I worked on a couple of movies. One was Sky Captain and the World of Tomorrow. And in the old days, they used to go and pitch scripts. Nowadays, you make a short film and you use that for your investors. Like Sky Captain and the World of Tomorrow was financed privately by doing that, and also the Saw movies were financed privately by doing that, by making a short film. By the way, you can see both those short films on YouTube.
There are probably some listeners who don't know the original story of Val Thor and the Stranger at the Pentagon. Now, I knew Frank fairly well. We were friends. In fact, he always came to Phoenix or San Diego to host our various UFO conferences, where we had a variety of speakers. I mean, we never just set our sights on contactees or abductees. We had a variety of people. We let it, let all the information be presented and let the public decide. But Frank had a very unique story in the annals of UFO research. I believe this would have been in the 1950s, was it not, when he had his original meeting with Valiant Thor?
It was December 1959.
59. Okay, he was apparently giving a seminar, or was preaching, delivering a service in Washington D.C. And after the and after the program, a woman came up to him and asked him if he would not like to meet someone from another planet. Correct?
Well, it you kind of back it up a little bit, and it gets a little bit more into August Roberts.
Oh, okay. Well,
and this ties into Howard Menger as well.
Yes, it does. Okay, but finish the original story, the contact there, about how he went to the Pentagon.
Well, the Nancy Warren is what he called her in the book. He did say that he changed her name. Came up to him, and he had a photograph of Valiant Thor up on his board, along with other things that he talked about, because one of his topics was UFOs in the Bible. Mm-hmm. And she came up to him and pointed to the picture, and she said he wants to meet with you. And anyway, they went into a back room, talked. The woman picked him up at his hotel the very next morning about 8 a.m., brought him to the Pentagon. They had to go through 2 stations, and she said, just do what I do. And, she opened her coat, and she had a badge, and he opened his coat. And, was there trans imagery going on or whatever, but he made it through, brought him to an unmarked door where Dr. Frank walked in and met him for the first time. And he said, hello, Frank, and introduced himself, and they sat and talked for a while. So, and I think towards the end of that conversation, he actually let him hold and examine his spacesuit, and I think it weighed something like 3 pounds or something like that. I can't remember. It's in the
It couldn't be cut. It couldn't be cut. It couldn't be burned. And
No.
Thor had no fingerprints.
He had no fingerprints, and he also had no palm prints as well. And over the years, I have met a handful of people who have met him, and they all say the same thing. They say when he looks at you, he looks right through you, and you know that he knows everything about your soul in that moment. Two ladies who met him when they were in their teens back in the 60s, I believe. One might have been in the 50s and one in the 60s. They both don't know each other, but they both said separately to me that when they were around him, they felt that, which I just described. They knew that he had an aura of peace, but there was a fragrance about him that they couldn't describe that was unbelievably calming and peaceful, and you knew and you felt like being angelic, right? So it's very clear when you're around somebody like that. Look, we go somewhere, we see somebody who's doesn't have so many scruples or has done bad things, we get a vibe, we feel it. It would be the same thing if we came face to face with a created being, which is what Valiant Thor is.
Well, why don't we take this opportunity to bring in Julie Stranges? Julie, are you there? Are you
with us? Pop in, Julie. Say hi.
Hi.
Yes, I'm here. I'm here.
Gabe, why did you now, Julie? Did you ever meet Valiant Thor, or how did Frank first approach you or bring up the subject of having met a Venusian? I mean, did you attend one of his lectures, or how did the two of you actually meet?
He was making a film up in San Ynez, California, and near Solvang. People might have heard of the town of Solvang. And at the airport, they were doing a segment there, and that's when I met him. And I started driving down to his meetings that he held once a month in Van Nuys. And I had my whole life believed that there was life on other planets as far back as I could remember. And I believe that he even came to the city where I grew up and spoke. Gave a lecture there one time, but I was quite small, so I didn't attend. But I remember there was a newspaper article about it. So kind of, things happen, and more things happen later on. You just never know. But that's when I first met him.
Mm-hmm.
And
what did you think though of his supposedly meeting someone from outer space? I mean, it's one thing to be interested in flying saucers, and it's another thing to say, "Hey, one of my best friends is from another planet."
Well, there was no reason for me not to believe him, and everything that he said resonated. Like Craig was mentioning, it just resonates within you that it's the truth. And the things that he asked him when he first met him, because you knew him for umpteen years, Tim, and you were very close to him. And so that he was also a minister.
Oh yes,
for a Christian minister
and also
for 68 years.
and also a immigration lawyer, correct, or judge?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he worked a lot with
Marshall.
immigration. He worked with a couple of attorneys in Los Angeles to help people get into this country legally, and
Well, he could be. He would
so
be
he
useful.
did a lot of work.
He would be useful today. That's for sure.
Yes, and he was a marshal as well.
Yeah, he was a California marshal with the California Marshals Association and in the public relations area.
Yeah.
So because he had a badge, he would, like, if there was a traffic accident or something, he would get his badge out and he'd go out and start directing traffic around to make sure that people didn't get in another accident, because sometimes, the lanes would be blocked or there would be glass and things in the street. So he'd guide them around it. And he did a lot of what I would call community service type things for the police department. He was very supportive of our police all over.
Yes, he was.
And so I had no reason not to question him, because it just made perfect sense to me. So it was interesting to read, the original book that was written. There was one written before Stranger at the Pentagon, a couple of them. So,
well, my friend from Beyond Earth, right?
Beyond Earth, yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That was one of them, and then Saucerama, I think, was his first one.
We still have a copy of copies of My Friend from Beyond Earth, and every once in a while somebody will, order something to do with a contactee, and we'll put it in the package. I mean, talk about a collector's item. I mean, that one, really predates. But Craig, why don't you ask Julie maybe a few questions, because you probably know her a bit better than I do.
Well, yes, I met her, at the same time with Dr. Frank. So we've gone down this long journey for a very long time. I think, the thing that was fascinating for me was learning about the vice commanders and things like that. And Dr. Frank put on twice a year an inner circle meeting in Las Vegas, where lots of people came, and Dr. Frank would give wonderful talks, and Julie would as well, and so all of that was very exciting. But I think the thing that I loved most was because Dr. Frank wasn't here physically when we had the premiere of the short film, was seeing Julie's face after she saw it for the first time.
Oh, wonderful.
And that just moved me so much. Why don't you talk a little bit about that?
I just want to, Julie. Okay, I just want to say here, we have Rob has been waiting on the phone with a question for quite a few minutes. So maybe before we hear from Julie, let's hear what Rob has to say.
Sure.
Rob, are you there?
Yeah. Hey, Craig. Hi, Julie. It's Rob Potter.
Hey, how are you?
Hey, Rob.
Good. I was happy to hear you guys are on tonight, sharing the good news of Dr. Frank and everything. And I got was Raymond Keller going to be on too, or
he's here?
Yes, I'm here.
Mm-hmm. Oh, good. I've just recently interviewed Raymond, and with Craig and Julie and Raymond on the show here, you have a lot of good information to hear the truth about the mission of Valiant Thor. And I've been reading Raymond's book. He's come like a whirlwind out of nowhere, and he's got 3 other books I'm going to get. It's very wonderful stuff, and I'm actually have been thinking of getting a hold of Craig. I'm doing another conference in Mount Shasta this summer. I'm calling it From Venus with Love, and we got Frank Chile and Craig.
Oh, awesome!
Yeah, maybe we can get Stranger at the Pentagon screening. We'll talk to you afterwards, but I just wanted to lend my support to you all here with the good news you're sharing and the mission of love and the truth of Dr. Frank Strange's contacts and stuff. So I'll let you go. And thank you so much for having them on the air, Tim.
Oh,
Tim
well,
and,
you know, we have a variety of guests from all avenues of thought and opinion as far as UFOs and the strange universe, the bizarre universe that we live in, and we continue to probe, as I've done for the last 50-something years now.
yeah,
So,
we talked
there you go.
recently. We talked some years ago. I work with
Yes.
Dr. Bell very closely in
Oh,
the
yes,
book you
I
produced.
remember that. Yes, of course. Well,
Yes,
there you go.
promise I was the character Eric in that
Yeah.
book. But you guys
Yeah.
go ahead. Thank you so much.
All right,
and,
thank you so much. All
Thank
right,
you,
thank
Rob,
you so much.
for
All right,
your
Rob,
kind
thanks.
words and support.
All right, now we're
Yes.
Julie. What were we getting into here now, Craig? You had
Well,
asked Julie.
it was just exciting because when we, I had never planned on showing Stranger at the Pentagon to anybody, the short film, because it was just going to be used for investors for the feature film. And the Burbank Film Festival found out about it, made it an official selection right away. And in the history of the film festival, they had never had any movie, short or feature, sell out. And Stranger sold out right away, all 275 seats. Anyway, we had a big after party, and there was lots of press that came that I didn't even know about. And one of our leads, who played Valiant Thor's wife, Eileen Davidson, had just become a Beverly Hills housewife, so we were on the Beverly Hills Housewives as well.
Oh, is that right?
So,
I missed that one.
and all the housewives were there, and they were filming it. So the episode actually was on a Beverly Hills housewife, which brought the story into people's homes that normally would never have heard of it. So
absolutely.
So which is fascinating and interesting, but for me to see this long journey, and my reward is to see Julie and Dr. Frank's face, but to see her beaming and how excited she was afterwards.
Wonderful.
And she was on the red carpet and everything. Would you remember what you? I remember it was hard for you even to talk afterwards, huh, Julie?
Yes, and my two sons were also with me, and he didn't tell me what the ending of the short film was going to be. It was part of an interview, one of the interviews that Frank had done. And I wasn't expecting that, and neither were my sons. And my sons were very, very moved by that. He basically raised them because we were together when they were about 5 years old. And so they were very close to him. And, to see him like that, on that interview was very moving, not just for me, but also for them.
Well, Julie,
so it was quite great.
Julie, I have to ask the $100,000 question. Did you ever meet Valiant Thor, or did he ever come into your house while Frank was there?
Well, I will tell you one thing. I generally don't speak publicly about my own personal experiences. But as you know, Frank went to a lot of places to give lectures, and he used to go to Apache Junction, Arizona, and when the snowbirds would come there, and they had a speaking, program at that time, and he went over there a couple of times, and the kids used to sell his books, and I looked up, and Val was in the audience, and the kids saw him, I saw him, so he was there, and he just fit right in with the people. He was sitting on the bleachers with the rest of the people who were there.
Now,
so
had he aged any since the time of his being at Howard Menger's conference?
Nope.
Just the same. They don't age at all.
Boy, I wish I was from Venus.
Yeah, I wish I didn't.
But you
Yeah.
you
And that
recognized
gray
him
hair
right out.
starts coming in.
But you recognized him right out. You could tell that was Valiant Thor.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And he was just sitting there with all the people, and none of the people knew who he was.
Yeah.
Because he's very friendly, and just fits right in with wherever he is.
Yeah.
So,
Well, when we come back
right.
from our break in a few minutes, I want to get into the story of Howard Menger. Now, I knew Howard. He was the East Coast, I guess, equivalent of George Adamski. He lived out there in High Bridge, New Jersey. He was a frequent guest on the Long John Neville show, and he and his wife Connie were quite personable individuals. I remember one time we were giving a conference in San Diego, and they drove all the way out there with one of his model spaceships that he had constructed, hooked up on the back of the car in a little mini trailer, and spoke. And we never paid any huge fees because we never charged $300 for people to get into our conferences. We'd have 40 and 50 speakers and charge a minimal amount of money. But Howard, of course, had a UFO conference that was very well attended in High Bridge, New Jersey, and at this conference, supposedly photographs of Valiant Thor were taken. And they're impressive. I mean, first of all, I knew the photographer August C. Roberts. He was not a hardcore believer, but he did have an interest in UFOs because he had sighted and photographed them on a couple of occasions. Anyway, I do hear the thunder and lightning in the background, and so we'll be back after a brief break. And please stay tuned because we've got another hour of fascinating Venusian stories to relate.
Exploring the bizarre. Your e-ticket ride into the world of the paranormal. Strap yourself in as we traverse the universe exploring the unexplained. UFOs, ghosts, lost worlds, cryptozoology, as well as other dimensions. It's time to take back the night. Now, your electrifying hosts of Exploring the Bizarre, Timothy Beckley and Tim Swartz.
Hey, Venus, oh, Venus, Venus, if you will, please send me a little girl for me to thrill.
Oh, yeah.
A girl who wants my kisses and my arms. A girl with all the charms of you. Venus, make her fair. A lovely girl with sunlight in her hair. Well, now, who are we talking about here? Who was Frankie Avalon talking about, do you think, Cosmic Ray?
He was petitioning the Roman goddess of beauty and love to send to answer his prayer and send him a beloved.
And who might have appeared if it were a UFO tale?
You never know who it might be. It could have been maybe Dolores Barrios or Aura Raines. Or,
well, I'm thinking Aura Raines because she was a rather attractive young woman. Now, what was most people would think of Aura Raines, who of course was the primary contact with Truman Bethram, was from an unknown planet known as Clarion. But I understand that she really was from Venus. Is that true? Why don't you tell us a little bit about Aura Raines?
Yes, Aura Raines was from the planet Venus, and she was a grandmother many times over. She looked like she was in her, though she looked like she was in her young 20s, and she was the commander of a space a spacecraft, a Venusian spacecraft operating from the far side of the moon, and she was in the desert in California and Nevada monitoring nuclear blasts.
Well, that sounds like fun activity. Now, how was it? Now, let me see if I can remember the story. Was not Truman Bethram working as an engineer somewhere out near White Sands?
Yes, he was working out in Nevada on Mormon Mesa with a road. He was a foreman of a road crew, and that's where he met her. He made 11 visits into space, and the first encounter was at the Mormon Mesa. Most of them were at the Mesa.
Yeah, well, I think didn't he take a doze off in his car or something? I think, and when he woke up, Aura Raines and a couple of the other visitors were peering in at him.
Yes, and he was quite worried when at first because she was wearing a military type outfit, a beret, and the crew, her crew looked Asiatic, and he thought maybe she might be Chinese communist or Russian or maybe
heaven forbid. Yes. Now, in
kind
fact,
of revolutionary.
Yeah, our favorite artist here, Carol Ann Rodriguez, who does a lot of our book covers and all. She did a drawing of Aura Raines, complete with beret and all, and that has appeared on more Facebook pages. People have used that, and in various books and things like that. Apparently, it's a fairly good likeness of Aura Raines, but other people met Aura Raines as well. It wasn't just like Truman Bethram was making up the story or hallucinating. Other people over a period of years, just like Valiant Thor, claimed that they had met this woman from Clarion.
Oh, yes, and I have some pictures in the Venus books by Dominic Lucchesi, even one from Truman Bethram himself.
Oh, that I didn't know.
Yes, they're in the Cosmic Rays Excellent Venus adventure, the original drawings, and her full story is in there.
Now, let's get into Howard Menger, because that ties in with Frank Stranges and Valiant Thor. Let's go back to what would this be, like 1957 or so?
Yes, 1957, and Howard was gaining some notoriety throughout the East Coast. And
he was indeed, yes.
Yes, he was the East Coast Adamski, he was called. And he was in the process of writing his book, From Outer Space to You, which was published by Saucerian Press in Clarksburg, West Virginia in 1959. And his wife, Connie, was also a contactee, and she had written a book called My Saturnian Lover, as well as some pieces in various science fiction magazines like Fantastic Universe, where she described light forms. And I had pictures that I posted of over there on Jeff Rentz's site of both Connie and Howard in a process of transmogrification. Howard's true identity was Sol Denaro. He was in this incarnation on Earth, but he was a light being from Saturn. And then his wife, Connie, was known as Marla on Venus, and she was the daughter, or she was the sister of the 5-year-old woman, beautifully arrayed in white, that he met on the big rock on his farm at Highbridge when he was a boy with his little brother. This was in 1932, when he was just 10 years old.
I was always impressed by Howard Menger, because he had other individuals who verified, to some extent at least, some of his experiences. I remember getting a telephone call one evening from a gentleman who told me a very interesting experience that he had had. He had heard Howard on the Long John Nebel show. Of course, Long John was the originator of the all-night paranormal UFO talk fest. Long before Art Bell, there was Long John Nebel. And he sparked up his program by having on some very controversial individuals. And a lot of them were people who claim, like George Adamski and Daniel DeFry and George Van Tassel, that they had actually visited with people from outer space, and in some cases actually gone on board flying saucers and traveled to other planets. Probably one of his most frequent guests was Howard Menger, who lived not too far away in High Bridge, New Jersey. Now, Howard claimed that he had on many occasions seen these craft actually come in and land in the apple orchard behind his home. And I think frequently they actually even came into the house. Now, he did provide photographs of both the ships that were coming down to land, as well as the visitors. But like I say, I was impressed because we didn't just have Howard and Connie Menger's word that something very peculiar was going on out there on that farm at High Bridge, but there were other people as well, some of whom were not even that closely familiar with Howard. There was this one individual that I started telling the story about how he had heard Howard on the Long John Nebel show and wanted to go out there himself to see if he could see any mysterious objects in the sky. He didn't particularly think he was going to have a UFO encounter or anything like that, but he parked in the field behind Howard's home. He did not announce himself. It was rather late at night. He told me that he did see a number of mysterious twinkling lights off in the distance, but he was not sure whether they were spaceships or not. He was seated on the hood of the car. But he got out there. It was about 12:30 or 1 o'clock in the morning. But the next thing he knew, the sun was coming up, and the sun should not have risen for quite a few more hours. Okay, so he had this experience, and he was a little bit befuddled by the missing time. This was before missing time, of course, was rather popular. Anyway, he went back home. And he began to have a series of either dreams or thoughts were being implanted into his head. He moved out from his wife. He rented a trailer, and just like the individual in the Close Encounters of the Third Kind movie, he started building all sorts of weird configurations and apparatus in the trailer, and he thought that he was being prompted by some entities from somewhere else, perhaps that he had contacted or had attracted themselves to him after his visit to Howard Menger's farm out in High Bridge. So, and there were other people who had claimed that around the same period of time that they had seen these mysterious objects, and they had seen Howard go off into the field and talk to some individuals, and the ships were there and so forth. Anyway, why don't you tell us about Valiant Thor and his visit to the UFO conference?
Oh yes. Well, August C. Roberts wrote an 11-page report of his observations of that day, and he said that Howard told him that you see those four people sitting over there, that they're Venusians, and so he looked at them, and then he saw that, looked at them closely and saw, hey, everybody else around there is really caught up in these people. They can't take their eyes off them. Something's going on there, and the kind of questions that he was asking were about the space program that was just emerging, the German refugee who came over in 1937, Willy Ley, the Rocketeer, and very interested about America's putting its toe into the cosmic ocean. And so this was, and cosmic evolution and life on other planets that Howard was talking about. And so he was writing all these things down, especially interested in Howard Menger's background and why he was so fascinated about Venus. So this was just a confirmation that Valiant Thor was the individual that in the Venusian in the picture that the alias Miss Warren in Washington D.C. area from Dr. Strange's church had identified. And so it's a very, very interesting story. And one thing, though, about Howard Menger and then some of these other contactees, Truman, Bethurham, George Adamski once said that being a contactee is the hardest job on Earth. And it really causes a strain in some marriages and relationships. So I have to commend Miss Julie for, I can just imagine how it must have been, in the 50s and 60s with all the sometimes undue attention that may have come her way and to her husband and children, and putting a wedge into what might normally be a regular life.
Well, the pictures that I have seen of those individuals on Howard's farm, and I just recently saw the color photographs, which I had never run across before. They certainly do stand out. I mean, they're extremely attractive. That's really about the best way that I can. They look like movie stars almost. I mean, they just and you can see in the photographs that everybody in the audience is looking at them. There's one photograph in particular where, I don't know, I mean, they could be looking at the photographer. I don't know how far away he was when he took those pictures, but everybody's attention is on those individuals.
And all those photographs that I sent there, they have August C. Roberts' official seal, his stamp, and then his typed comments that were on the back of each of those pictures. So you get August C. Roberts' immediate impression of what was happening back there on that fateful day in 1957.
Well, now, and that's not the only photograph of an alleged Venusian. Now, there was Dolores Barrios. Is that how her?
Yes, Dolores Barrios.
That was taken in, what was it, 1954? There, out there in California.
Yes, that was the 7th and 8th of August. Well, the photos were taken on the 8th of August, the last day of the convention. It was at the Skyline Lodge. On the west side of this sloping hill going down there at Mount Palomar. And people noticed that she had this odd appearance and that she looked like the painting that George Adamski had just unveiled of Orthon. So people kept pestering her. Are you a Venusian? Are you, what are you doing here? This and that, and she was just trying to duck out of there with her posse, her two friends, and the people chased them down the hill, and then Miss Barrios somehow summoned up a swarm of bees, which stopped the people dead in their tracks, and then gave them time to just dematerialize into an ionized cloud of light and ascend up into a scout craft, and away they went.
So now, how did you get to meet her years later?
Well, in California, I've met with Gabriel Green on several occasions, and met many people in ufology throughout my life, and one of them happened to be Miss Barrios, but that's not the name that she went by then. She changes her name every 15 years or so, and her full biography I have in Venus Rising, the first book, and then in the second and third book I have some of her further adventures and pictures of her.
Well, did she track you down, or did somebody come to you and say, "Hey, I've got somebody you need to meet"?
No, I just met her with a group of people out at Gabe's house, Gabriel Green's house.
Okay. All right. Well, because I know, I mean, there's been a number of people over the years who, have been, speculating over those original photographs and what may have happened to her. So, I mean, it's interesting that she was still out there.
Yeah. Yeah. The original photographs were taken by João Martins, a report. Ed Keffel, he was the photographer for O Cruzeiro magazine in Brazil, and then the October 1954 issue published the story about the convention that involved testimonies from 3 contactees: George Adamski, Truman Bethurem, and Daniel Fry. And then João Martins is the one who wrote the article. So she wouldn't even be known if it wasn't for those 2 individuals.
Hey, you know what I wanted to ask you about? I saw in one of your books here, rock and roll musicians who had contact with Dimension X. I'm not familiar with that. Can you fill me in a little on Dimension X?
Oh yes, Dimension X was an area of research by physicists at the time, and it was a name that was just coined for this nebulous phantom zone that existed out there in the regions of space that the extraterrestrials can use to transit through space and through time and interdimensionally. And then a lot of people don't know that Gabriel Green was himself a physicist. He had degrees in physics and nuclear science, and he had many friends in that community. And so there's a chapter in the final countdown, Rockets to Venus, that includes some of the speculations of Gabriel Green and other physicists about this region in space, and it's outside of space and time, outside the space-time continuum as we know it.
Did you by any chance know Michael X?
Michael X. No,
Michael X. Yeah, Michael
Yes,
X. Barton. We just recently reprinted his Venusian Secret Science and Venusian Health Magic books, which was actually a course. But he was one of the contactees from the era of George Van Tassel and the Giant Rock conventions, and very articulate. I mean, I always loved Michael X's writings. They were right to the point, and of course, he was the first to actually publish the concept of the theory that at least some UFOs were made by the Germans, the Nazis, and Frank Strange believed in that as well as Tim and I both do.
Oh yes, in fact, there's one of the books that you published by Omnek Onek, Sheila Dixon. I didn't know that she had written this one particular sentence, but when I had finished doing some research on a particular German astronaut, and that Andy Reese from the Weekly World News, he was a correspondent for my publication in California, the New Millennial Star. I've been researching about this German astronaut, that came down and splash landed off the East Coast, picked up by the carrier USS Roosevelt in 1991. And then where had he been all this time? And it was a big mystery. It was on the cover of the Weekly World News, in fact. And so we followed up and dug up all this information, found out the name of the astronaut and who he was working for in Germany, and it all fit in, and where he was.
All right, hold that thought, Dr. Keller, because we have to go to our break, and we will come back and talk more about Venus.
Now back to exploring the bizarre with two of the most electrifying researchers in the paranormal, your hosts, Timothy Beckley and Tim Swartz.
Welcome back to Exploring the Bizarre. And Tim, here we are with the final segment of the program, so I think we better just jump right in, because I know we have a lot of questions remaining that we want to ask our guests. But Julie, I want to bring you in and ask you, you made a comment during the break. We had been talking about the color photographs that had been taken at Howard Menger's place of the Venusians, and you had something interesting to say about the woman who was photographed.
Yes, the lady who's in the picture, whose name is Jill, has very beautiful red lips, and it is not makeup. That's her natural color. And I'm sure that most people think, oh, she's wearing red lipstick or something in the picture, if they've seen the color ones.
Yeah.
And it's not. That's her natural color.
Those photographs
I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah, those photographs are available, online. I can't now just offhand. I can't remember where I ran across them just recently. But these people. I mean, they stand out even more once you see these color photographs.
Yeah, I may have some posted on the Stranger at the Pentagon movie Facebook page, or on strangeratthepentagon.com if people want to check it out. Because I know I posted the color photographs, because there's not that many of them.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. You were saying, how many photographs did the photographer take? You said it was like over 200.
It was about 250 supposedly that August Roberts took that day. So the ones that we've seen, or maybe about 20.
Wow.
Something about, around there. So they have to, they had to have landed in some other collector's hands, when Augie passed, because I believe, Dr. Keller, do you know when Augie passed?
I'm not sure of the date that he passed. But he was a collaborator with Otto Binder, the science fiction and comic book writer, and they were planning on writing 2 books. And there's an 8-page draft, and then another page that I have. I just published the first page of 8, showing the that they did plan to work together. And so August Roberts was forwarding sets of all his UFO photos to Otto Binder. So that was one. And he forwarded these sets to many people in the UFO research community, but I think maybe he just picked the best ones, what he thought were the best, because some of them, are just the same thing, but they're not.
Right, I'm sure. Yeah. Yeah, and again, where he was, whatever camera he had back in 1958 when those photos were originally taken and rolls of film. So,
Well, as we all know, unfortunately, a lot of times when a person passes away, their family doesn't realize,
Yeah.
what is left behind, and a lot of that stuff just ends up out in the trash heap.
Well,
True.
another thing about Jill that Julie could probably that Julie probably spotted too was the fact that she has very long fingers, and I have one photo in the third Venus book of Dolores Barrios sitting on a rock, and her fingers are very long too, even longer than Jill's. They do look very, very strange, and that's somewhat of a key there for looking for celestials that are living and working among us.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and that's one of those things that we have a number of witnesses throughout the years who have no idea about, other people who have made the same observations, that these Nordic types have unusually long fingers, but I mean not freakishly long. I mean they're described as being delicate and beautiful almost.
Yes, and the Paul Hellyer, the former defense minister in Canada, he said that generally they can pass for us here in America and blend in, but they do have to take precautions because some of these physical differences are quite noticeable. But one of the comments that he made on Russian television, a UFO special, was that out at Area 51, there's about 80 different species of ETs that are living there at that facility, and the human-looking ones, they dress up. They kind of overdress like nuns or priests or ministers when they go into the town, when they go into Las Vegas, because they like to, check out the malls and go to the casinos and everything. I thought that was
go see life, sure.
I've heard that from other people that the casinos can be a favorite habitat, so to speak.
The casinos, and another favorite. I'm doing a series of articles for Lon Strickler's Phantoms and Monsters, and then Brent Rain's Alternate Perceptions about Venusian tourism and various cases where Venusians have come to Earth to enjoy our mountains and go horseback riding or fishing or just sunbathing or swimming. And it's very, very interesting. I've found quite a bit of information on this subject.
Craig, I wanted to ask you, what has been the reaction from your film at this point? I mean, I know it's been out for a little while now. I mean, what's the reaction?
Well, like I said, I had never thought I was going to ever show it. I was just going to use it as a piece for investors. But once the Burbank Film Festival happened, and then we were we were shown on Beverly Hills Housewives, and we won the Burbank Film Festival for Best Sci-Fi Short. Then all of a sudden, everybody started taking notice all over the world. So I did like a year of touring with the film, speaking to people between 200 and 500 per audience about the story and showing the film. And then other things happened. I just kept doing all kinds of shows, and I did a Gaia show, which on Stranger, and that became one of the top 10 most watched shows ever on Gaia TV. But the other thing was Ancient Aliens saw the film, and they called and they did a whole story on Valiant Thor, along with Dr. Frank and Harley Bird, who was a part of Project Blue Book, who actually wrote the foreword and confirmed the story. But also on Ancient Aliens, Paul Hellyer confirmed the story because he was a part of the show at that time, and that aired last December. It's season 9, and the episode's called The Mysterious Nine. My producing partner, Tanya, she is in Europe, and they've had many screenings there, and she said once she thought she was just going to a very small screening, and she said there were just so many people that she was flipped out. It was in Germany, and they had actually taken a little small thing that I had done, and I have on my YouTube channel, just explaining the story, like a 7-minute thing. They had actually transcribed that and showed that before the film. And then she said that at the end, they all stood up and they were giving it a standing ovation. Wow. So I just get lots of, I would say the response is about 95% positive. There's always going to be a hater here and there.
Oh, sure.
That kind of thing. But that's a very good response, because all of the notes of the shows and things that I've done, when people make comments, is that this is the first time they've heard of a positive story, and that they feel safe that there are beings like this that are here actually helping and protecting as well.
So now, have you been approached yet by anyone wanting to take that next step?
Well, I've been setting it up. So right now I'm in the stages of setting up the feature film, and then as soon as we go, we could maybe be seeing it by 2020.
Wow. So, well, I mean, considering the excellent special effects that you've got in the short.
Right.
I mean, it's to do a feature length. That's going to require. Yeah, that's going to require some computers churning for an awful long time.
Yes, I've actually been meeting with a lot of visual effects people, and who do giant films, and basically because we will have so much, because we'll be on the interior of Venus, we'll be on a giant mothership and see a lot of the mothership. We'll be on the Victor-class saucers, which are 300 feet in diameter, and I think it's 97 feet from the top of the antenna all the way down. 2 stories. Each craft holds 200 people. Will be a lot on those craft, and then at the very end, we'll be on a gigantic, unbelievable starship. So there's going to be a lot of, we're going to be up there a lot and learning about their worlds as well. But and then the other part will be down in Washington. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to give the film a sort of Wizard of Oz unbelievable color feel when we're up with Valiant Thor and the crew and all of the craft, and then when we're in Washington, I'm going to give it that sort of that 50s feel. Remember how color film looked like in the 50s? It just had that different kind of grain to it. So it'll get, which is sort of representation of the 2 different consciousness as well, because, he's from where he is, and he knows everything, but he still has to go through it. And people have a choice to act or not act on what he knows that's going on in his head. So,
I'm looking forward to
it's
seeing
great.
that.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to making it. I mean,
I
everything
bet.
is ready. Everything's ready, set, go. And it's going to just be so, I mean, it's just going to be really exciting because we're going to see things and images and stuff that we have never seen in film before. So, and by the way, the short film had 80 visual effects in it. 80.
Wow.
That's a lot. Yeah.
That is a lot. Well,
but,
I mean, I remember when I first talked to you, I mean, you were still in the process of creating the special effects. And I mean, that took, oh my God, I mean, that took more than a year.
It took a year. Yeah. Because, you know, we had a certain amount of budget, you know, we did a crowdfunding just for that. And we just had a certain amount of money, and we had to find somebody that could actually do it. And I found a wonderful company in Phoenix. And so I was going back and forth to Phoenix a lot. And, you know, so... I mean, you know,
I'm happy to see, Craig, that I contributed to that crowdfunding for that. So.
You did. Thank you so much.
Right. Oh, well, I mean, it was a project that I believed in and wanted to see. Go ahead, Julie. I'm sorry.
If I could just pipe in one thing.
Please do.
I don't know that people realize that having this book made into a real first-class film was Frank's dream. That was his life's dream from the time that he first wrote his first book and that in different stages became Stranger at the Pentagon. That was his dream. And to see it come into fruition and become reality is something that there are no words to describe.
You know,
and I know that he'll see it. I know that he'll be seeing it. I just wish that he were here in person to see it, but that was his life's dream. Was to see that.
You know what was one thing that I didn't think of is when the film was done. I did several screenings out at the Integratron because you know Dr. Frank and I went out there many times and did UFO space conventions. Mm-hmm. But Dr. Frank used to MC all of them with George Van Tassel back in the day.
He emceed with Jim Beckley's too.
Yes. Right. And so it was exciting to bring the film back. He just did it
to enjoy he enjoyed doing that. He loved people. He loved speaking, and he would, do little side seminars for people there. And we met some wonderful people as a result of that, and some are still our very dear friends.
Yes. So but somebody at the Integratron said, "Do you realize that you just made the very first movie about the Space Brothers from the 50s era?" And I went, "Wow, you're absolutely right." So
that's incredible.
Very exciting for everybody. Yeah.
Yeah, that's incredible thinking. I mean, here we're talking about something that happened, especially back in the 50s and early 60s, that it took all this time.
Exactly. And people can watch the short film on the website, strangeratthepentagon.com. So, so it's very, it's just very exciting. And it was so wonderful to see it, all come together, to see Julie's face on the night. And Dr. Frank was there. I mean, we all felt him. So, and there were even other contactees who were there with George Van Tassel in the early days that were there in the audience as well. So, there was everybody came. It was amazing.
Dr. Keller, I wanted to, unfortunately we're rapidly running out of time, but just really quick, I want to play just a devil's advocate. You have a lot of scientists and, astrophysicists who say that, there's no way that anybody or anything could live on Venus. I mean, it's got acid atmosphere, the pressure is extremely high, sulfur is falling from the sky. It's just absolutely impossible. Yet here we have for years, people claiming to have had contact with physical, human-looking Venusians.
Yes, in my book, Final Countdown: Rockets to Venus, I talk about this and the various space programs in Russia, in Europe, in the United States, and Japan that have sent probes to Venus, and we're getting a lot of contradictory information.
Mm-hmm.
For example, we know there's diverse conditions on Earth, and it depends on where a probe would go when it goes to another planet. If it were to land in the desert, or if it were to land in crash into the side of a mountain or a volcano. And well, we found out that, for example, that the Russians say that the temperature is moderate, and that what they were measuring was electrical heat in the ionosphere, in the upper atmosphere, and not on the surface of Venus. Not thermal heat, just electrical.
Right. Okay.
And then we know that the atmosphere is bimagnetic, and that there's water vapor that has been detected on Venus. So why hasn't it evaporated and blown off into space or turned into steam? It's so there's a lot that, and then Valiant Thor himself had said that many of the Venusians live underground in vast cities constructed in lava tubes, and as well as facilities on the surface in the mountains in the more temperate regions.
All right. Well, I'm going to have to stop you right there because we're almost out of time, and I want to give all of you a chance to let our audience know more about you and where they can find your books. Dr. Keller, please go first.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Tim. The three books are Venus Rising, Rockets to Venus, and Cosmic Rays Excellent Venus Adventure. They're available through headlinebooks.com or also on Amazon.com. They've won 4 awards, three in London and 1 in Los Angeles, Southern California Book Festival. And anything you ever wanted to know about Venus, I don't promote any religion or any cult or anything like that. Don't have any organization. Just get my books if you want to know about the mysteries of the cloud-shrouded world of Venus. All
right, and Craig, what about you?
So Stranger at the Pentagon is easy at strangeratthepentagon.com. And my book trilogy, soon to be 4 books, is called The Autobiography of an Extraterrestrial Saga. And it's, if you were to put Star Trek out in the universe and they were extraterrestrials raising consciousness on Earth, that's what the books primarily are about. And the first book's called I Am Tehran. Tehran's the lead extraterrestrial from the Pleiades. People can get the book trilogy at autobiography of ANET.com, or they're on Amazon as well. And book 1 will soon be an audiobook in about a month on Amazon.
All right. And Julie Strange, thank you very much for being with us tonight. I really appreciate you taking the time for us.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me. I enjoyed it very much.
Great. And Craig, Dr. Keller, thank you for being with us tonight as well. And to our audience, thank you for listening in, and tune in next week for more Exploring the Bizarre.
You've been listening to Exploring the Bizarre with hosts Timothy Beckley and Tim Swartz. They're taking back the night by jetting non-stop across the cosmos in search of the truly bizarre and totally unexplained, with you as their co-pilot. Thursday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern, on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. For more information on exploring the bizarre, and hosts Timothy Beckley and Tim Swartz, check out their KCOR Digital Radio Network page. Follow their YouTube channel at MRUFO 1100. Exploring the bizarre.